An employee drove me back on a very slow buggy, and when I arrived at the gate, all the people who had been waiting were gone. I ran up to the counter and threw my 2 small tickets desperately into the flight attendant's hands. I begged to be let on. It was everything to me that I be let on, but she said the plane had already left. I spent days waiting for the next plane that was headed to where I wanted to go. I finally managed to board. Once again, there were people I knew there. I went to use the bathroom in the back, and the plane took off while I was sitting on the toilet. Though I knew the flight attendants would have been upset to find me there, I was happy because the view from the bathroom window was so amazing. We were flying so low to the city, just above the highways, flying in between the homes, dipping down sharply, then up. Then I realized this was not the way it was supposed to be, and I got scared. We flew over a vast recycling center that only poor people used. Their bags of garbage went on forever. I was certain the plane would make an emergency landing there, but when it did not, I made a quick decision and slipped out the back door of the plane's bathroom. I landed safely on the ground, my fall softened by all the garbage bags. I went into the recycling center, just a wooden shack surrounded by garbage, many miles from where we had taken off. Poor people were handing their garbage across the wood counter, and the man behind the counter was paying them pennies for it. I went back outside and was surveying the dump when I noticed that my plane had crashed into a nearby lake. Its end was sticking out, smoking with fire. I was so relieved that I had jumped from the plane in time, but also spooked. I walked up to a curly-haired woman by the shore, my Jungian analyst. I asked her what the number of the flight had been, and she told me, but the numbers were not familiar. It had not been my plane at all. Now my plane was very far away, still traveling through the sky. I would not be able to catch up to it by running or even with a car. I would have to find my way back to the airport, back from this unfamiliar town, and take yet another flight out. I woke at 4:30 in the morning, my heart beating fast. I had to discuss this dream with my Jungian analyst, so I went to my computer and made it gently ring. My analyst's name was Anne. She was in her mid-50s. Decades earlier, she had studied in Zurich, then moved to Toronto where she practiced for many years. I met her while I was studying at the university, taking her class on Carl Jung. A few years later, I returned to her as a patient. 2 months ago, she moved to the English countryside to live in a barn on a farm where her family had farmed for generations, which was now idle and was where she had been born. I felt so grateful when she answered my call. It was almost 10 in the morning there. She asked me how I was, if I'd had any dreams. I told her about my dream, and she asked me if I had made any decisions lately. I couldn't think of any. Then I remembered my breakfast with Margaux and my desire to pull the play. Anne asked, "Did you imagine writing the play would get you somewhere higher and better, just like an airplane does?" I didn't know how to answer such a plainly obvious question. Of course. But then writing it turned out to be dangerous, like the airplane in your dream. So you've decided to quit. You slipped out of your marriage, too, which you also hoped would get you someplace higher and better. Sheila. Wait. I want to cancel the play not because it's dangerous, but because life doesn't feel like it's in my stupid play, or with me sitting in a room typing. And life wasn't in my marriage anymore either. Life feels like it's with Margaux, talking, which is an equally sincere attempt to get somewhere, just as sincere as writing a play. Sheila sees Anne glance into the corner of her room. Anne. But life isn't only where things are exciting. It's where things feel hard and stagnant, too. And arguing for a pure act that doesn't have a product in the end, well, there's 2 things there. One is there's not a concern for making a living, and second is there's not a concern with working to the end and winding up with something solid. Sheila. Except for the story of what happened. The story of you talking to Margaux? Perhaps. Sheila becomes ashamed at the thought. You slipped out from the plane at the first sign of danger, but then you returned to the airport to catch another